I had hopes to finish up this playthrough today, but other things came up, like a nap, that I really needed to do. And I got to get my life into better shape than it's in. That means we're probably not going to finish up until after the week, maybe during the weekend or maybe after it. I'm not sure. Because tomorrow is almost certainly not going to see much play. And tonight, I'm not going to get much either. Excuse me. Pulled in production. There's no reason not to pull everything in at this point. The Germans actually have a Spanish production. So they're going to get an offensive. And actually, they don't get an offensive because they're not actually at war anymore. But they're going to get some builds that might do something for them. I don't know what. They could go invade Portugal or something. The important point there is their cubes, or whatever, their score, which is negative, counts towards the Axis total in general. So if the Axis is somehow going to surpass either the Russians or the Allies, that's going to have to, they might be able to get an extra point that way or something. On the other hand, of course, they might be losing Bavaria, which would cause them to surrender completely. So they've got to move quickly before that happens. And then, well, they get to keep the score, I guess, for their diplomatic conquest or whatever. Other countries as well, like the Ruhr is coming in. I don't know. Are the French going to need that? Well, maybe. It gives them a free offensive, so it allows them to use one of these as a build that they wouldn't otherwise maybe use. And they do need to get some builds in the cup. I don't know where we're going to end up, but it looks pretty likely that it's just going to be a strong Allied victory. You can see they're up at 10. The Soviets are at 6. Now, Japan's not doing badly at all. It was brought up as a point of, well, maybe the friendly Hitler wasn't such a great idea, but a friendly Japan, or friendly Tojo, it seems to work better. And I know some people have actually expressed this elsewhere. I believe Bridger told me this as well. The problem with the friendly Japan is that it relies on, like, the reason they're doing so well here in some ways, and they're able to kind of hold out a little bit and maybe not collapse before the end of the game. They're clearly doomed, but especially since they went to war with Russia and got stabbed. But the problem with that is the only reason that they were free to act for as long as they were and that no war started is because Germany was largely friendly, largely peaceful. And that was not my intention, to tell you the truth. My intention was to try to orchestrate things, but things started falling apart in Europe. France started building up an army. It just didn't look like, we tried to attack them. It just didn't work. We were hoping to knock them out, but they were a little too strong at that point. And we didn't get strong fast enough. And I mean, we're talking what, back in 44 or something? Maybe it was 46 that the war started. I don't remember which one the war started. I think it's 44. The 44 turn. So 43 started the war. And France just had been given too much time to build up. They aren't a powerhouse, but they were stronger than, with the British support, they were stronger than Germany and Italy. And then, of course, the Russians coming in, which you just can't let the United Nations, as it was called, have that kind of an advantage in terms of time and build-up. You have to get the jump on them, and you have to start taking out some of their capabilities. I just couldn't swing it. It's very difficult to get a war going in this game. At least an effective war. I could have swung a war very easily with the Axis. I was unable to get a war on the terms that I wanted at any point. The U.S. is here after really just 2 turns of war and have basically pushed Japan. There's no sphere of defense or anything like that. And they've got Japan right to the limits. Now, also, they've only got 2 carriers left. They're not going to be able to build more navies. They're pretty overwhelmed. If I had taken losses on the carriers and kept the more expensive carrier upgrades available, maybe I'd have more fleets available. Maybe I'd have an extra fleet or something, and I could get lucky and be a little better defended now. But with the game running out, with the clock running out, it doesn't look too likely I'm going to take Japan, Korea, and Hokkaido, nor that I'm going to drop this steady morale down, which kind of means, I'm not going to be able to invade China effectively with the Americans either. So it kind of means that Japan's going to walk away with a lot of victory points in the bank at the end of the game. That doesn't necessarily mean the end of the war, of course. The game is a competitive exercise that tells an interesting narrative. What are these Brits doing here still? Jesus, I don't know. They were supposed to go over. I don't know why they haven't. I guess I just forget about them, or maybe I didn't get an opportunity because I did the redeploy and then I don't think I've done anything since then. Okay. Anyway, gonna figure out my builds at this point. Production for the Allies is just so huge compared to anyone else. Russia's got some decent production, but it does not compare to the US's. And then you've got Britain and France. Of course, Russia's not terribly concerned with the US. Their problems are Japan, Britain, and France. Forget Germany. And yes, Germany is actually still belligerent. They're at war with Russia, so they do get the free offensive from the Spanish, which is cool. Otherwise, I don't know what they would do, just a diplomacy action. They do want to build forces to try to prevent a loss of Bavaria, though. It's not going to work. They can't throw anything in Bavaria. They can't build there. They can only build. Yeah, actually, they can't build. Maybe they'll just take another offensive. They're not allowed to build because they don't have a production site. So then here's our production. You can see a fair number of offensives in everybody's pool. Again, this is the time to shake things up. There's a lot of builds that aren't going to make a damn bit of difference, like building boats. Carrier improvement might matter. Might be able to repair a loss if it comes out at the right time. Yeah, it could be reserved, but we could do that by building it with an offensive, if need be. It's cheaper to build it with an offensive than to put the marker in, right? And offensive costs, it's the same. In terms of reserves, French reserving some infantry. They want to defend. I don't think they actually need it. Yeah, they do. They only have 1 tank army in Germany, in Berlin. Russians grabbing an offensive as their reserve. They want to hit the French or the Germans before things go any further. Japanese want an air unit. That's their best defense that they could come up with. The Brits take an air improvement because some of our planes over here are not as good as they might be. But the Americans take a flag. This is important because they're going to try to ally with Britain, but they need to get they need to wait until Britain gets one of their 2 flags up first. I don't think the Americans really need troops right away, although an air improvement, which they've got in the books, they got a couple of them available, could help. But we can attrition. The Japanese are not able to produce enough. So we might actually end up with a landing in Japan. We also built our subs. Another option is to try to cut off supplies to Japan. And if we can do that, that'll make life a great deal easier. Actually, we can't cut off supplies to Japan at this point. We could cut out supplies from Japan, which might make it easier to maybe seize some Chinese territory, but we're probably wasting our bucks on subs. What if we don't build those? Shoot. we could get another offensive, but let's not build those and take a carrier. In case we take a carrier loss, that way we can rebuild it. The subs, I have a really hard time figuring out how to use subs effectively in this game. But, you know, a submarine blockade of Japan could prevent resources from getting to Japan. But at this point, there are no resources left to be collected. It's the last turn of the game. And technically, you know, well, theoretically, the war would continue, and maybe subs would be deployed, and maybe they make sense under those circumstances. But because we've got an end of the turn, like an edge of the map or whatever, it lays a constraint. We're going to have a lot of chits in the cup. This is going to be a fairly long turn. No way it's going to get done tonight. So I'm probably not even going to start it. Wish I had called this at the end of last turn, because not only did I go out dancing, but then I knew I was getting sick, and I ended up spending the last 3 days ill, unable to play, unable to do anything reasonable. I think I'm recovering. I mean, I think I'm mostly recovered, but now I've got like a whole bunch of stuff on my plate that I got to deal with, and probably not a lot of time for gaming right now, but let's see if we can push through this and get this done today. First things, do we have any trumps we want to do? Well, I hardly know what's even going on anymore. Like, the US has a flag there. Why the fuck do they have a flag? I think because they're hoping for a British flag. Which means I think we're going to go with the British upgrade of their bomber. Might as well get that out of the way, right? And this looks like the more valuable place to have it out of everywhere. Japanese airplane or German offensive. Yeah, the German offensive isn't really that necessary. That's something that's not really affecting anybody. What about the Japanese airplane? Well, we could use that here in the East China Sea, but we're worried they're very close, not quite set up to do an invasion of Japan. I'm going to put this here because it can support into there if need be. U.S. gets another shot. They're not taking it. Russia has an offensive. Do they want to fire that off right away? I'm not sure. I got to think about that a little bit. So the French are going to take their reserve, which they're going to shift into Berlin to help defend Germany. It was kind of the one place that might have made sense. Now we whip back around. Germany might as well fire off their offensive. Why not? We are out of supply because we have nowhere to trace to. So we'll go in. I think this is the only attack we have of any value. We could attack something like Austria. That would give the Allies some pips. I don't know if we particularly want to do that. I don't know how to play this out, you know, from the Axis point of view. Right now, they have to see the Soviets fall. But I don't know that. Well, they're giving the Brits a pip anyway. Either way they attack, and this is the better chance. Okay. So what do we got? We got normal 2 German dice +1 for air support versus, we'll call it an Allied die. +1 to the Allied die, -1, I believe, to the Axis die because of being low supply. I don't know if it's important. 4 to 4, that's going to be a standoff. We lose this, we can't take it, and we did piss off the Brits and their allies, well, France as well, anyway. So Britain and France each get a flag. Britain wants to bank theirs because they're going to do something with it. France might as well bank theirs as well. No harm in having a flag in reserve, I guess. there might be some better opportunities. Which means the US and Britain are going to try to make an alliance. Got 3 dice now. They fail. Cubes in the alliance box. That pale green looks like Italy to me somehow. It just doesn't look like an American green. Is this? I don't know what I'd call it, but Italy is probably the closest country that I would use that for. Russians still not going to do their thing. French can't because, yeah, the U.S. and Britain. So, actually, the U.S. could do that on their own. They don't need to use the British flag. I was mistaken. They can join the Anglo-French alliance, which is all they had to do. Get a British bomber or an American bomber. This looks like a powerful place to have one. This fleet, why is this out here? Why is it there? It's not allowed to be there. It's there because it's cheating. So that's actually a problem. Yeah, I can't invade the sneaky way. I can't be 2 spaces out. I don't have a port out here. So I don't know. All right. I make mistakes left and right in this game, right? You know, it's a tough game. It's a tough game to understand everything that's going on. Could use an extra plane out here. British offensive. What's a British offensive going to do me? I should be thinking about flags. Are we at war with Russia? Russia's at war with Germany and Japan. Russia's at war with England and France. Jeez, I don't know. We get 3 ops. These should all be face up. Nobody's in their screwy position. Huh. Guess we could start wearing down the Russians in Germany. Why not? We'll do this with all British forces because we get more planes that way. We're going to take a 2-pip bonus just to give us the best chance of doing something cool. We get an 8 to a 4. That's 2 hits on the Russians. Russians don't want to take 2 hits. I'll flip lots of counters. So they'll take 1 that they're required to. We'll pull back. And now the Allies have air support, but not armor support. And they got a 2-pip bonus. And now it's 7 to 4. That's 1 hit. Do we want to give up Silesia? I mean, not really, but we don't really want to lose units either. However, we don't have enough withdrawal capability to get out of there. We're kind of overstacked, so I'm going to have to look at the retreat rules. So we have to take 2 hits on the Russian army. Now, the fact... No, just 1, right? Just 1. Yeah. The fact that we couldn't retreat both of our units means this is the more economical use, and it means the Brits are repulsed, so we don't lose anything major out of it. Is it offensive time yet? There are advantages and disadvantages. I really like the idea of trying to punch through with a couple of offensives and knock France out. Not that it's likely, but as kind of the sole way of winning the game. Not necessarily the best way to come in second. You know? Coming in second, we might want to just play things carefully, but I don't know if coming in second is necessarily a good thing. Thinking about what the world situation would be, especially if it's kind of a deep second. It looks like it's going to be. The Allies. Bloodshed. It's a Japanese plane increase. Now the Allies could come in with a flag. Everybody's good. British tank. Where the hell am I going to use a tank? I guess we only have one option. I really should back away at this point and not do as much. Now I get a British flag, and that's complicated. This was just an American flag. I can't bring the Americans in, which means I can't pull them into the alliance. They have to be the ones who try to get in. I could, however, try to pressure them. That doesn't seem like a bad choice. Try to give them a flag. And we do. Russia's still not taking their offensive, for whatever reason. Japanese infantry. So this is complicated. Do we want to try to protect Japan? Well, it's not really under that much threat. It looked like it was at one point. I'm going to throw this into Manchuria. Keep the Russians a little honest there. Russian infantry. What to do with the Russian infantry? Speaking of honest, remember, we've got a nice line running through there, so we can, because of the Trans-Siberian, so we can just shift stuff in. If we take Korea, we might force a Japanese reduction, not a surrender at this point. A Japanese offensive. What the hell am I going to do with that? I can't bank it. I don't know. Let me think. So I said something in mistaken. I can bank this. And honestly, I'd rather do that right now. It's not something I usually do when I draw a chit from a cup, but apparently you are allowed to throw it in there if you got room. You can kill what's ever there. That allows the U.S. another shot at an alliance roll, though, which they'll take. A +1 this time. And we win. We get to put our cube. The rest of the allies, which means all kind of interesting things. We are now at war with Russia, and Britain and France are at war with Japan, and I gotta look to see if that causes, I believe it will, some flags to happen. Whatever level of comfort I had, at first I was thinking, wow, it's kind of cool, I'm getting right back into this, which one would think with normal systems, but this one's so alien to me that I'm not so sure. But, yeah, wow, I got a Czech factory there that I haven't spent. Neat. But as far as I can tell, I get flags for the alliance being created, which means Germany, Italy, and Japan each get a flag. So let's put those there. I get an alliance for declaring war. The U.S. declared war on who? Russia. We weren't already at war with Russia, I don't believe. I'm not positive about that. And Japan because Britain and France declared war on them. So this whole slew of flags occurs. Now, do we want any of these in our boxes? Germany will certainly take their flag. What the hell? Japan has to dump it in the thing. Russia has to dump it in the thing. Unless, they wanted to get rid of it. Okay. That gives Japan or Germany action. Germany is going to take one in order to increase their stability, I guess. Does it even matter? It does, a little bit. The question is whether they should go for diplomacy instead. Germany only gets 2. Stability increase. Propaganda. Okay. And now... I'm just trying to see if exhaustion has more effects than I thought it did. British and French flags, neither one seems incredibly impressive. We don't want to do either of those offensives particularly. Okay, another German offensive, I think. It's hard to see the colors. I've mentioned this before. Well, we don't have troops here. We could be evacuating Bavaria if we do this. But we're kind of out of choices. We could build troops. Yeah, we got nowhere we can build them. All right, let's. I don't know what to do with that. I honestly don't know what to do with that German offensive. I could bank it. I'm kind of. Still kind of out of it, which is part of the problem. But I'm also kind of not sure that there's much I'm going to bank it. I don't think it's very useful, and I can always burn it if I don't like it. When I had troops, it made more sense. Maybe late in the turn, maybe I want an offensive. But that's all I can think of. So that was a German action. Russia's holding off their offensive still. U.S. aerial planes. Well, I don't know. Not much use for that. Japanese flag. I hate to burn that offensive. So, what could we do with the Japanese flag? Can't think of much. Yeah. Really, I want it for stability at some point. I can't just try something without effect, I don't think. So I can't try to do a propaganda action in the hopes of getting just a cube out of that, which might be useful. I can do diplomacy. I can actually do diplomacy on Java, which isn't terribly useful, but it's better than a kick in the ass, I guess. I mean, it means that it could be conquered from me, but that'll divert the Allies, perhaps. Chances are I'm not going to be able to do shit with it, so let's try it. We've got a -1, so we need a 6. And we don't get it. You don't get a cube for diplomacy. Russian offensive. All right. Well, we got to start doing them, I guess. Our planes are not in good shape. I'm kind of worried about a British invasion. Shit. That would suck. Maybe I should be defending against that. There's a reason those fleets are out there, isn't there? All right. We are going to try this. We have air support. I think we're going to not spend additional pips. So we get 3 dice for air support. The Germans get 2 dice at +1. It's 5 to 5, that's even. We'll kill the Russian infantry for the German infantry. That is a success. So we get a cube there. We get a flag for that. Germany makes a check. And it's just a normal check. They survive. Oh, except they have no home areas left, so they actually undergo their surrender. No need to make that check. Means I flip through the rules looking for this. A power immediately surrenders if at any time it controls none of its home area. It's eliminated from the game. Each enemy power gains a flag. That's only Russia, and they don't have any flags. All allies with land units in the power's controlled areas or naval units in their bases may gain control of those areas or bases. They don't have any allies. The power's allies must conduct a stability test. They're not actually allied with anyone. Remove all their counters and cubes from the game, and any counters in the action cup. We'll worry about those later. The victory marker, however, stays where it was, so that is the end of the Germans. Place a neutral cube in each of the power's home country or colony areas. That's none. Unowed bases in any of their printed bases. They don't have any. Flip the surrendered marker's stability marker to its surrender side and give it to the Russians. That's not it. Make sure we haven't ended the game. The opposing ideology with the most cubes in home areas. Ooh, that's actually a question. 1, 2, 3 versus 3. Okay. Both ideologies get the surrender flag. All right, I think that's a problem. I think I just ended the game. That means the surrender flag goes between the two allies because they split Germany equally. Let's check. 1.6. I was thinking if the Russians killed them off, that wouldn't end the game, but I think I just blundered into the end. It's not a big deal. I'm preventing the Axis from somehow exceeding my value. All powers in one ideology, no. One ideology has caused the surrender of 2 powers. That would be the Western Allies. So the game is over at this point. And we count the victory points, which are already essentially in place. And that means the Axis ends up losing. We don't have to finish off Japan. I don't know what it means. If you look at the historical result, it's not that far from this. You would say, actually, the Russians, I think, conquered Germany completely because they would have gotten the 2 for Berlin area. So they would have 4-2 for the Allies. So the war would continue in that historical situation. In this situation, it does not continue. And that's all we got. You know, I'm a little surprised by the ending because I thought wow, the Russians were going to keep trying to push through to France. Their chances of doing so are just about nothing. So let's say we did. We'd go into here while French planes would come in, and then probably can't drive them off. Yep, the Russians get a victory, so they would indeed drive the French off. I'll throw them both into Paris to help defend it. And now the Russian attack is 3 dice to 1 at -1. So that's 7 to 5. That would be successful. So I'd take a French location. This is if it hadn't ended. We take a French cube there. That means French victory marker would go down. Democracy would go down. Russians actually went up 1 anyway. And the fascists went down 1. That was for Bavaria. So then we'd get 1 more attack. Now this is pretty unlikely. But first, the French get a chance to collapse. And they do. A little bit. And then the final Russian attack, the planes, and we're not really... This is just, shits and giggles what I was planning. Had it gone out. Well, the French would defeat the Russian plane, and they would hit it enough times that they actually force it to be destroyed. And then we have a battle with the French getting an extra die for air support. But the Russians win, except the French can take a casualty so they don't lose Paris, and they fall back. And then what goes from there, the Allies have to kind of scramble, but they probably are in a good position to start slicing the Russians apart and just, make life very difficult on them. On their negative side, they don't have any offensives sitting there, so the next chip becomes important. There would be a crisis, who knows. But anyway, that was kind of what I was thinking along there, was there would be a possibility for Russia to cause a German surrender and then a French surrender, and boom, maybe squeak out a victory with another 2 points here. Democracy would be down to. If France surrendered, I don't know what that meant, but we might have actually been able to squeeze something out that's a little bit more exciting. As it was, we ended up with that solid second place finish by causing the German collapse, because we don't have enough of the cubes in Germany. We had to take Berlin or even the Ruhr first. What about the playing? How did it work? Well, as people have advised me, friendly Hitler doesn't work very well. Friendly Hitler, eventually the Allies can come up with an attack on it, and he's just not, at least as far as I can see, he just doesn't have the power to resist a Russian Allied attack on him. He doesn't really have the power to resist either one of them in this game, but that may have been more my misplaying it. He should probably be able to build up a defensive line. I just didn't focus on defense that much, like no fortresses or anything like that. I focused on eventually trying to go to war, but it wasn't happening. Over here, there's a lot of points that the Axis are able to bank in Japan. The problem with that is eventually you get into this situation. Now, in the opposed game that I played before, the US was in this position a little earlier, but Japan's a tough nut to crack. Same damn space in both games is where it becomes, almost impossible. And yep, that's Okinawa right there. Pretty damn vital, because without it, there are no naval bases that I can exert the invasion power this way. So only through Okinawa can you really get the invasion easily. I mean, yeah, there's other things you could do. You could do it from out of China, conceivably. Of course, Okinawa is going to block that, but if you could do it here into the Yellow Sea or something and cause all kind of craziness. but yeah, I think trying to figure out how to handle the Japanese theater the best is probably one of the trickier things. There seems to be a lot of capacity for the Japanese to hold out at least against kind of naive, incompetent play. Not that my Japanese play is not naive and incompetent as well. Everything is here, but that it requires a good deal of thought to prepare yourself for this invasion. That good deal of thought is probably the biggest barrier I have for this game, which is not just there, not just where I'm weak on naval, operations and such, but the amount of thought that I have to put in to try to, and planning and everything, try to get into a war. Usually that's sort of the assumed state in a World War II game, right? It's going to just happen. It's funny, even the Great Patriotic War, the Barbarossa scenario, man. You start out a piece in that, and somebody was just like, "Wow, that blows my mind." Yeah, it really does kind of. The game is not so much about conducting the war as engineering the war that you want, or wars that you want, engineering the political situation so that the wars favor you, and to some extent the build up and everything. There's other stuff I got to go into, but we'll hold that for the review portion. I think I'm going to load this up. What are we going to call this? We're going to call this 47 because we didn't make it through much of the cup. All right, let's